the technical hiccups in getting started with today's presentation. But we do appreciate your time and joining us, and we'll certainly make use of it today. As I mentioned, my name is Patrick Hall. I am the practice lead for our Applied Innovation department. And what we'll be taking a look at today is Azure Purview. It was recently released into public preview. And certainly as a part of today's presentation, we want to first identify what Azure Purview is, and then really kind of talk about how we envision Azure Purview being positioned on the Microsoft Azure platform. And then we'll also talk about an internal initiative that we're looking at this summer that we certainly think will shed a little bit more on the Azure Purview platform and solution, as well as how MDS is looking to position and utilize this exciting new tool in the future. So with that said, Sam, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll run through this quickly. So yeah, a little bit about MDS if you're not familiar with us. We were founded in 1994. We're headquartered currently in New York City, but we have branch offices in multiple different locations. And as everyone knows, we're all remote, so we're pretty much national at this point. And we're also a 100% women-owned business. So this is our methodology. It is our full lifetime engagement model. We start with beginning to end with all of our clients in hopes of enabling their digital transformation and really building on part of your IT team. This is just a little bit of the awards that we've won recently. So we have a few different Microsoft ones that we've won in the last few years that we're really proud of. And then finally, our Microsoft portfolio. So this is all of our different competencies, and we also have a few advanced specializations. And as you can see, we have a data analytics and data platform gold competency, and only a handful of partners achieve this level of standards.
So thank you for that introduction, Sam. And really what we're looking at today is the agenda. And today's agenda will start, like I said, with identifying just what Azure Purview is, how we believe Purview is positioned to become more than just a data catalog or data governance tool, but also a unified data management experience interface. As today's presentation is the start, as we mentioned, of a spring, a long webinar that we're calling the Spring Innovation Series, we're going to delve further into the Microsoft Azure Data Platform, and we'll certainly also share with you an internal proof of value effort where we explore how perhaps the greatest cataloger of superhero equipment, Lucius Fox, and really try to imagine, if you will, how he perhaps would annotate the greatest inventory of superhero equipment and digital data in comic book lore. So the DC versus Marvel thing notwithstanding, we're hoping that you join us and basically see some value in drawing up what a data estate looks like, in this case, the fictional Wayne Enterprises, and look at Lucius Fox as perhaps the data cataloger of the vast, sprawling data that would perhaps be contained within Wayne Enterprises. So with that said, we want to talk exactly about what Azure Synapse is, right? And so, as I mentioned before, my name is Patrick Hall, and I'm the practice lead with Maureen Data Systems. We're based out of Manhattan, New York. And today's topic, to me, is a very, very exciting topic because, when we talk about the Azure Data Platform, it is certainly an environment where we do and conduct most of the work. But when I say we, and again, I'll be joined by two of my colleagues here at MDS, and they also happen to be very talented data scientists and engineers, Riwat Sharma and Benjamin Weisberg. We're going to start with this within this Spring Innovation Series, looking at Microsoft's recent release, Azure Purview. And what Azure Purview is, it's designed to help you make sense of your organization's data estate, right? And so what is the data estate? And that really is a question that I think, particularly as we start a lot of these Azure data platform engagement, we want to make sure that we identify with customers, because I think a lot of times when you actually, verbally say it and look for a response from a customer, it may surprise you, some of the answers you would hear, right? Because it does, start with that challenge of identifying just exactly what a modern enterprise data estate is today. And we can certainly say that the modern data estate has changed over the past few years. Listen, I think we can also even say that the modern data estate has changed over the past few months, right? In the past, data professionals had to combine multiple products. And some organizations, certainly look to multiple roles to kind of achieve that holistic approach to kind of solving and identifying their data sprawl. And certainly being able to address any of the challenges that comes with a massive data sprawl, right? And so as we take a look at Azure Purview, and really as it was formerly called Azure Data Catalog, Azure Purview now features a much more enhanced user experience interface. And part of what you hear us mention quite a bit today, over our talk, is Azure Synapse. And we believe that, when we look at Purview, certainly, if you are an organization who has an existing investment in Microsoft, as well as, the Microsoft 365 platform, certainly being aware of the Azure Data Catalog, as well as some of those services and components, is certainly critical, right? And perhaps a lot of those services and components you leverage today. And so when we kind of talk about what our data estate is and defining what that is, this is really important, because now with Azure Purview, Microsoft has now created a solution that really allows organizations to lift that veil of mystery that has really kind of been around the areas of data governance, right? Data catalog, being able to understand just what data you have, the level of protection that should be around that data, and really who gains access to it. So as we define what Azure Purview is, it really consists of three main components. It's a data discovery, classification, and mapping component that automatically identifies an organization's data on premise or in the cloud. And it really evaluates characteristics or metadata, and really kind of look to certainly understand the sensitivity. And so when we talk about that metadata, we know Microsoft has components out there today that allow you to label data or identify and annotate some of that data. And so when we look at Purview, it's really a solution. It's a unified platform that looks to leverage that investment that you may have made in identifying and categorizing that data. The other component is a data catalog, right? And so what we look at with that is enabling users to search for trusted data using a simple web-based experience, right? And so the visual graphs, it lets users quickly, see and identify specific, points of inquiry within the data sources. And then there's the data governance component. And again, that's something that, when we talk about, currently Azure Purview, formerly Azure Data Catalog, we know that it provided a very robust data governance component. But certainly we think with this particular iteration, Microsoft has provided a very comprehensive enterprise view of your entire data estate. And it allows, data officers or even data citizens, if you will, to be able to gain insight into things of your data lineage, the data movement, as well as being able to identify just where sensitive data is stored within your organization. And so when we kind of talk about what that architecture looks like, particularly, as we say, those customers with an existing footprint, in Azure or even Microsoft 365. Um, in the past, being able to understand the data and allocate where data resides usually were in the domains of particular departmental resources or subject matter expert, or it could have been more associated with a solution subject matter expert, right? But as we kind of talk about this new unified employee experience, what we're now saying is that all of the roles that you associated in the past with some of these solutions, and again, right now we're talking about Azure Purview, and we knew formerly that was called Azure Data Catalog. And then again, earlier we're certainly associating a lot of the data compliance and data platform features to Microsoft's other unified platform solution, which is Azure Synapse Analytics, right? Microsoft's a version of its Azure Cloud Data Warehouse or modern data warehouse platform. You get the sense that Microsoft is now looking to be able to empower not just the traditional IT data professionals, but like we said, the full spectrum of data citizens. It can be anyone, from a report consumer to the database administrator, or even third-party producers. When you take a look at the current Azure data ecosystem, the ability to either integrate with line of business systems like Dynamics GP or Salesforce, or maybe even leverage existing cloud data like data in Teams, right? Or chat history or things like that. And then, of course, being able to leverage your existing data lake store, being able to understand, because as we know, the data lake store, without proper governance, without proper oversight, it can become become unwieldy, right? Very fast. And certainly if you're looking at, B2B scenarios or business to consumer scenarios, certainly you're talking about heightened security and certainly much more visibility and awareness is warranted. And so when we take a look at today's modern Microsoft Azure data ecosystem, we certainly get the idea that you're able to leverage not just the entire data catalog or Azure data platform, but its ability to allow you to integrate with third-party solutions or non-Microsoft solutions is also invaluable. So we talked a little bit about earlier um, our spring innovation webinar series. And as we are a Microsoft partner, we certainly work with Microsoft on quite a bit of engagements, but certainly when there are opportunities that come around where Microsoft partners with other companies around the world, we certainly try to take notice, particularly if it's an area that's relevant to us here at MDS. And so with the Grundfos customer story, we really took a look at this and it resonated to us because when we saw their solution, we identified that they were looking to leverage a data governance service, right? But within that service, they were looking to not just adopt it, but also leverage it with Azure Synapse Analytics, Power BI, Azure Data Lake Storage, and SQL Server. And we thought that, particularly as we take a look at the core Azure data architecture today, a lot of those components are really resonant into what a lot of the day-to-day, vertical to vertical architectures look like. And so we thought that based on this, we should actually create our own internal initiative here at MDS, where we begin to explore just how much has the Azure Purview platform changed from Azure Data Catalog, as well as explore how we can integrate it with our modern Azure Data Warehouse that we have deployed today on Azure Synapse Analytics. So with that said, we wanted to explore some ideas, and then we came up with, the idea to be able to capture data, to be able to enrich that data, and then be able to quickly search that data. Again, we are looking for an opportunity not just to be able to identify and understand our data estate, but we're also looking for an opportunity to supplement that with the really modern infrastructure of the current uh, data warehouse, the modern data warehouse. We know that that certainly doesn't look the same as it did back in 1988 when we first learned of what the data warehouse was and began to leverage that within enterprises. And so by utilizing the cognitive search pattern, we're able to now take a look at data within a specific data estate, right? With multiple, right? One, many data sources, and we're able to capture that data. We're able to transform and enrich that data, and then, of course, like we said before, to annotate it, right? To catalog, to have some type of imprint that we make to know what that data is. And then once we've done that, we want to be able to conduct meaningful searches using that architecture we've built, leveraging the cognitive search pattern. So with that said, we decided that our internal initiative, we were going to take a look and imagine what it would be to be the greatest cataloger of superhero equipment ever, in my mind, right? And I'm sure sure Marvel fans may debate that with me, but we decided to say, hey, you know what? Let's get inside the mind of Lucius Fox. Try to understand and envision what his process would be like to first not just identify equipment and inventory for Wayne Enterprises, right? But we also want to take a look at that particular Office 365 group that he has that's called Nighttime Reading Activities with Lucius Fox, Alfred Pennyworth, and Bruce Wayne. Right? We want to understand the sensitivity behind that content, and certainly understand the structure that goes behind storing that content within the Azure Data Platform, and then certainly being able to protect that data, and then certainly making sure that we can identify where that data is, and then certainly being able to get insight into the data lineage around that data, right? How did that data get there? Who's seen that data, right? What modifications have we made to that data? And I think that is where, when we go through that initiative, we get to explore and certainly share with you, if you're willing to join us over the course of the next few months for our Spring Innovation Series, where we take a look just how Lucius Fox would catalog the inventory of equipment for the world's greatest detective. So with that said, what we're going to start with is establishing an Azure Purview instance, right? And so to speak a little bit about what we're going to do going into that, I am joined today, like I said, by my colleagues, Rewat Sharma and Ben Weisberg, and they'll be working and joining us for the Spring Innovation Series. And they'll also be a part of this internal initiative where we, like I said, climb inside the mind of Lucius Fox and help us build this out. So with that said, Ruat, Ben, thank you guys for joining today's call. And of course, we've obviously worked with the Azure Data Platform quite a bit, but I'd like you guys to kind of start a little bit here talking about what Purview is, and particularly as we kind of talk about this internal initiative with the fictional Wayne Enterprises and kind of looking at Lucius Fox as a data cataloger or curator, as Microsoft calls it. If you can, describe to us some of the business value, particularly that we could capture from this exercise, not just from the Azure Purview standpoint, but also from the machine learning and analytical standpoint. And so, Rawat, I'll go ahead and turn that over to you if you can kind of walk us through that process.
Sure. Yeah. So, as we know, even if when we start, a machine learning project or, for a data engineer, the first thing is to, find the data. So I think that is the biggest problem when we start for any ML. We want to know like what data we already have and what we need. So Azure Purview, I would say, would be our one-stop solution. You can go to Purview, you can see the assets that you have, right? Sometimes what happens is what, I have seen is many teams, they already have the data, like customer dimension they've pulled in, but they go again, because they need some other data, they pull another dimension. So you sometimes have duplicate or redundant data living within your, Azure ecosystem. It could be in data lake, it could be in Synapse, it could be in Cosmos DB, because you're not aware of the data that is there. So that that is where I think Purview comes into the picture, and it also lets you classify your data, and also marks your data as sensitive. So it will let you know, like, first name, last name, it should be encrypted. It will let you know everything, while it is classifying that data as well. So I think,
Awesome.
yeah. So I think
Yeah.
it's starting point. It's the starting point for anything that you're doing on Azure, be it machine learning, be it data engineering, be it business intelligence.
Awesome. And I appreciate, I think it's really critical point, right? Because when you were kind of talking about that classification process, I know particularly, as we're kind of talking about Purview, but also, we work on the platform for a living, right? And so Ben, I know, certainly some of the engagements we've been on, I think, when we talk about classification, it certainly is an aspect of machine learning that we think probably doesn't get enough credit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And oftentimes, there's small teams that take ownership of certain data. And obviously, for something like machine learning, we want to take all the data that we can get, right? So a lot of the times, if not most of the times, that's coming from different departments, and data might be classified in many different ways, right? Each department can be completely separated from one another and have their own methods of doing this. So then with Purview, we have the ability to actually track all of those changes, right? So when we talk about transformations on data and classification, oftentimes these are, complex pipelines, right? So we could see it there on the screen, where we can feed it to one team, or the data scientist can actually look at exactly where that data is coming from, track every single change that's being, run against that data, and then actually get a much deeper understanding as to what that data means, right? Because like Roat said, the most important step is actually understanding and collecting the data. The machine learning part is, relatively the easier part. So with this, this gives us really a bird's eye view of like where all this data is coming from.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. Both you and Ruat kind of lend, insight into that process, because I think a lot of the times, particularly as we go into, a lot of these engagements, right? That data definition piece, particularly when we kind of take a look at data feasibility, that really gets underestimated, because a lot of times with the data, feasibility, if we don't have that proper definition, we run into some of the issues that we've certainly seen. All right, Ruat and Ben.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. I mean, oh, sorry, go ahead, Roat.
yeah, Patrick. Sometimes what happens is, when we sit with the client and we start with the project, uh, we are told that this is what is there, but when we go and see, it's almost everything is like null. So before even beginning, our assumptions are that we'll be getting the data, but it's not there. So with, I think, Purview, yeah, you get a bird eye view of what is there and what is not there, and it can basically help you plan accordingly.
Perfect. And so, guys, as we're kind of talking, and I know obviously we're a little condensed for time on today, and so we again apologize for kind of the abbreviated presentation. But what we wanted to do is really kind of shed insight into what Azure Purview is, and then also highlight, and hopefully that you guys continue to join us over the spring for our innovation series, where we look at, like we said, our fictional Azure platform, where we go in there as Lucius Fox in our fictional Azure enterprise, and we take a look at how we would inventory both data for Bruce Wayne's nighttime reading club, and then as well as for Wayne Enterprises. And so that's going to be something that we'll be looking to do over the course of the next few months, leading into July, when we're expecting Microsoft to release Azure Purview to general availability. So certainly as a Microsoft partner and working on some of the Purview private preview components, we'll certainly share with you some of our discoveries. And like I said, within our next presentation next month in April, we'll look to walk through and explore some of the findings specifically with Azure Purview within our, as we saw and demonstrated there, our Lucius Fox Azure Studio deployment. One of the things that we also want to highlight that is a part of the Azure Data Platform is that we currently have an offering which is called the Unified Data Platform in 30 days. And certainly what we're doing is we're working on the top of the Azure platform to explore what the modern Microsoft Azure data estate looks like. And within that data estate, of course, it could be, unified data catalog tool, in specific use cases, that you're looking for that side of things, or it could be a modern data warehouse, right? Wanting to be able to take a look at being able to establish a modern data warehouse on top of Azure. Certainly that would be included with those engagements as well. So certainly if there are any questions around that offering, feel free to reach out to us or follow up to us, and we'd be more than happy to talk to you about that specific engagement. And as I mentioned before, really kind of the main thing is to really kind of provide an overview of what the Azure platform is, allowing you to explore the overall data platform and specific services, like we said, Azure Purview, Synapse, along with Azure Platform as a Service, information as a service components, you name it. We would certainly look to explore that over a transformative 4-week period, so we can be able to partner with you and discover as many things as you look to on top of the Azure data platform. So with that said, let us know if there are any questions. We do understand that today's presentation was abbreviated somewhat, but again, we would love to hear from you, and we would certainly look to have you join us as we build out our Azure Purview enabled data estate, where we explore Lucius Fox managing the Wayne Enterprises data estate. Okay, so with that said, I'll turn it back over to you, Sam.
Yeah, so if you have any questions, you can feel free to put them in the chat and I can ask Patrick them, or you can unmute yourself and talk since we're not on the live. So yeah, we can give you guys a few minutes to ask your questions. Well, if there's no questions at this time, we can end a little bit early. However, if you do end up having a question, you can obviously contact us. Everyone should have my information as well as Patrick and his team. I will also be sending out an email with this recording and just some collateral to help you get started with this journey. And then I'll also send over next month's registration if you would like to join us. And thank you again. We do apologize for the technical difficulties in the beginning, but it all worked out and we hope you enjoy it. Have a good day.